Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Heidi Mendenhall, and today I'm going to be sharing a little bit about our local story, which is a rural approach to help me grow for families, providers, and leaders. So, this work is absolutely our story. And what I have found more and more and more, and I'm sure you all have found this too, if you have found your way to this session, is that our rural nature connects us and is often the nexus of we are more alike than we are different. And so I am hopeful that you will find places that mirror your story and your journey of Help Me Grow, and places to maybe reflect, ask some questions, and think about your work a little differently through our lens. So with that, we will dive in. I am the executive director of First Five Tehama, which is in California. First Fives are a government entity that each county has. I'm also a resident of Tehama, and I'm also a parent of children that are Help Me Grow age. And so it's with all those lenses that you will hear me speak. Okay, so first we breathe. And I just want to take a second to ground us in this moment, to think to yourself what your two-word check-in might be. In this very moment, I think I am feeling hopeful and also a little overwhelmed, both and. And to really ground ourselves in this idea of starting where we are, using what we have, and doing what we can. I love this quote. We do a lot of this work thinking about what our resources are right now at this very moment and how we can utilize them to do the very best we can. It's common, I think, in our rural narrative, potentially put on by folks not ourselves, to think, well, we just don't have the resources to do it. We just can't be like them. And we are working to flip that and think about the amazing resources we do have and just moving those steps forward that we can. So I encourage you to refer back to this quote: start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Starting with our why. So in Tehama County, we have some data that we are constantly reflecting back to. This particular data set that you're looking at is one that First Five Tehama provides in this conglomeration to the county annually. It is how we personally look at our strategic plan and what we need to focus our most energy on. Every 3 to 5 years, we take a very deep dive. Help Me Grow and access to resources, navigation services, and better health information in all of our providers' hands around the 0 to 5 world has been at the forefront of this work for the last 3 strategic planning sessions, the rounds, right? So that's like 12 years. And it hasn't always been called Help Me Grow, but it's always been about what we can do to support our children and families to increase their supports and wellness through birth and onwards through life, what we can do to prevent these child abuse numbers, what we can do to provide strengthening supports for families so that this is not where they turn, and how we can really support our well child and dental visits, because we know that that is that baseline of health, right? And so you can see many of these numbers, the ones in red are the ones that we are just definitely higher than the state average for. And you notice reading on there, because one of the things we know to be true is all of this impacts our cognitive development, and also our reading scores predict so many other positive outcomes in life that we can't wait to 3rd grade to be thinking about that. We have to think about what things we can put in place now that will support those 3rd grade reading scores. So this slide is very much our why. It's also really critical that we use this slide to define it into different audiences. So for example, when we are working with educators, we might really be thinking about our reading scores and thinking about the number of children screened and how we can support that. And then when we are thinking with our public health providers, we might be really thinking about the number of well child visits and how our Help Me Grow home visiting program increases the likelihood that folks are getting to well child visits, right? So this is our all-encompassing single slide of our data to indicate the need, and then we use it to tell our story and to wrap our arms around and link arms with different partners in different ways. All of this is accessible. Well, first of all, you could go to the First Five Tehama website to pull down our annual report and our strategic plan, and you'll see this data, and you might see it in a little bit more detailed form. Also, nothing is uniquely collected for us. It was all statewide or nationwide data, which also is why it's a couple years behind. And we just say, deep breath, this is what we have, this is what we use to do with what we can, right? We would love it to be more timely. Of course, there are some things that we collect a little bit more timely, and then otherwise we just ground into our why and we move forward with the actionable work. And I think that's something that's really, I don't know, a unique maybe, or one of our values in our Help Me Grow collaborative is that we're really action oriented. And so we don't want to just kind of brew about the data. We want to do something with the data. And so that to us means being okay with what we can access easily and then moving forward with it. Okay, so now we are moving on to adverse childhood experiences. Now, this data is not always easily accessible. And for us in rural California, it's even harder to access it because we have a combined county region. So you can see there it's Tehama, Colusa, Glenn, and Trinity. For a while, we kind of did that brewing about like, wow, can we separate it? What can we do? How can we look at it different? And then we landed with our families are mobile. We know we move in between these. 2 of these are neighboring counties. Many of our families probably access resources in both counties. And so we just took the approach that what this looks like to us is that we need more protective factor supports, more preventative family supports, and more opportunities for our providers and healthcare providers to understand what it means to do an ACE screening and connect to resources based on that ACE screening. So our work with adverse childhood experiences and Help Me Grow has been kind of 3-pronged. One is that any of the kind of outreach sessions that we do for health providers, professionals, we include some information around ACEs and ACEs screenings. 2, we participated in some grants, and Help Me Grow was a key partner in those grants. And 3, we have educated our home visiting collaborative as well as all of our Help Me Grow navigators on some base level information about trauma-informed practices, adverse childhood experiences, and even what it looks like to screen. To date, we are not actively screening, but that is something that may come in the future. Okay, and this is just our way to really kind of dig down into what those ACEs might be. And remember, we don't really know because when you're looking at a screening, you're just looking at a number, that's the aggregate data. But what we can see is many of those ACEs come from parents needing extra support, right? And so this helps us know that while we are focused on the health and wellness of the child, it is of utmost importance that we have it within context of the family that they grow up in. Right. And this helps drive our Help Me Grow work when we are doing outreach to both think about how we can inform about child development and the need for ages and stages screeners, as well as include information about parental resources, parent education, parent supports, access to substance use prevention, right? And really think about how we can wrap our arms around those families. It also increases the kinds of professionals we are thinking about at our coordinator cafes. Sometimes we call these connection cafes. Here in Tehama County, we call them stress buster cafes. And we think really far and wide. We invite probation. We invite substance use prevention. We invite behavioral health. We invite the DA's office. Like, we really go far and wide with the kinds of adults that might end up in families' lives and how we want to support their knowledge of the 0 to 5 resources and relationships to providers that deliver those 0 to 5 resources. Okay. All right. And then this is something that has actually really of recent been lifted to the very top. And so that's why I included it, which is our prenatal and postpartum depression symptoms. We identified this as an incredible need in the county because we have very, very, very little resources to support it. And so this is actually something we're partnering with Butte County on, to look at what they have done. And they've started a Mother Strong group years ago that's connected to Help Me Grow, and it's hubbed out of Help Me Grow. And in that partnership, what we realized is there's these available free national resources for parent groups, for postpartum groups, for professionals to get extra clinical licenses and various specializations in. And so this is one of those use what you have, do what you can ideas, right? Like, our numbers are abysmal. We have story after story. I personally have story after story. In the last 2 months, I've had 2 different individual cases that I've ended up involved in where we know we have a mother experiencing postpartum. We know we have a child that may be very close to failure to thrive at 3 and 4 months, and we don't have the right resource to leverage and clue in immediately, right? We might get there. We might get there in 3 to 4 weeks, but right now this family doesn't have that 3 to 4 weeks. And so we just have this narrative and story after story of that we need to be able to use what we have to do a little bit better. And so one of those steps was reaching out to local counties. And once we did that, we realized we had this wealth of information available to us that we didn't really know how to access or weren't accessing. And so we are just going down that journey now. Okay, so what does it mean to look at our county supports? How are we doing this? Well, this is a snapshot of our county. And you can see it's color coded so that you can see the amount of children that live in different areas, right? And so really there are 2 of the heaviest populated areas, but it's over 100 miles of county. And when you look up here in kind of these Paynes Creek areas, this is very mountainous, very mountainous. Down here, this is very mountainous as well. And we have some real kind of resource deserts, if you will. And so that is the how we think about supporting with Help Me Grow. It is not a one system approach or a one-pronged approach. We provide open access to all online. We provide open access to all via telephone, and we provide mobile health navigators that are willing to come to you. And we look at different outreach type opportunities based on the area. So for example, there is something called the Manton Apple Festival, which we very rarely get more than a couple families engaged in resources at, but that's the only opportunity way up here in the corner of the county to have an interface, because there's not a school there, there's not a site there, there's not a way to just embed ourselves in the community other than that. And so we do it, right? And then we also look at language. And so here, Corning, Gerber, Los Molinos has a lot higher of Spanish populations, Spanish speaking families. And so we really think about what kinds of outreach we're doing there and who we're sending and how we're partnering. And sometimes that looks more like partnering with more businesses than it does professionals, because those businesses, for example, we have 2 really rock star donut shops that house our books and engage families, and we find a lot of enrollment through them. So it's very different. It's a wide, diverse county. And I imagine this is similar to your rural nature. And one kind of wondering of how is, are you empowering yourself? Are you letting yourself get creative? Or are you trying to find a strategy that fits all your areas? And how can you get more creative? Allow yourself the energy to think differently for how to reach those different areas. Okay. And this is the people of the how. I really love this slide. These are some of my favorite humans in life. So I mentioned we are multi-pronged. So first 5, which is me here and Angela here, we are the primary funder for Help Me Grow. And we also operate the online data system. And we lead the community and health provider outreach. So, well, actually more the health provider outreach, really. We lead the health provider outreach. So that's kind of our role. And then here, Melanie, she is our Help Me Grow director that is funded via majority of our funding, around 70 to 80%, but also has co-funded through public health and other grants. And she is housed at the County Department of Education. And so our Help Me Grow navigators live housed out of the Department of Education, and she supervises them. She also leads the community outreach, and under that Help Me Grow umbrella at the Tehama Department of Education is also a Parents as Teachers model program. So the way we layer up is that there's this Help Me Grow catch-all, right? We want to get you screened, we want to get you connected, we want to get you enrolled with the right resources, we want to circle back every 6 months and touch base and see what we can do. And then there are families that are leveling up and needing some extra support or wanting some extra support, which is the beautiful thing about the First Five funding, the Parents as Teachers model for home visiting. We are the only in-county home visiting model that does not have income or very specific requirement enrollment guidelines. So if you are alive in the county and are a 0 to 5 family, you are eligible for Parents as Teachers, which is wonderful because it's also our catch-all, right? So we also have 3 other home visiting programs that sometimes we know that they are like primed and ready for home visiting, and they might come to that home visiting program through that angle. We connect because of our partnerships through to Help Me Grow and are able to serve them if they don't meet those eligibility requirements. And then we have Michelle, who is our resident nursing angel, we like to call her, and she's our supervising public health nurse. She provides our thriving and well baby checks. She also manages the Help Me Grow, or not Help Me Grow, excuse me, Healthy Families Tehama. She's co-director of the Healthy Families Tehama home visiting program, which gives us this great partnership there. It has enabled some co-funding, which has been fantastic. And also, she is our inroads to that health provider outreach work. So Angela and myself work really closely with her at trying to really infuse our medical professional world. I am not a medical professional. I don't hold a license. And as you all know, if you don't hold a license, sometimes it's harder to get in those doors. And so Michelle is our key in our work there. Okay. What is not pictured on that slide are all the amazing Help Me Grow navigators, who I'm very proud to say are all bilingual, bicultural, English, Spanish, and they do the majority of that family connection work, right? Which leads me to this slide, the family at the center. So when you think about our system and the 4-pronged approach, that's all very familiar with you. You're all very, very well versed in the Help Me Grow framework. You probably are also well versed in the multiple hats idea of the rural world, right? We have our families at the center of the work. That is utmost and foremost. And when you look around those families, you see that it only takes a few individuals to really meet the wealth of resources that we need, right? Because it's always all about relationships. And in the rural work, we see those relationships come to fruition and really get work done. So what you see here is each of these areas is what we would look at to ensure that we have resources to support the whole family, right? We know we need mental health and behavior. We know we need child welfare. We know we need employment training to get families engaged in the workforce. We know we need family and social supports, right? We know we need all these things. Like this is not something we came up with. This is something that the nation and state has identified as this is what creates a successful system of support for a child and family. And then we put our names by it. And when you look at it, it's really only 6 or 7 agencies that meet all of these things, which is what's so beneficial and helpful in the rural world when you let yourself take a step back and you don't just go through the title, but you think about who that human is. That human can touch 3 or 4 things, right? So for example, I can see myself in 4 places in here. And so I might get contacted by somebody for 4 different reasons, but they only have to know me. They only have to have a relationship with me. And so in our work in the Rural How, we have really tried to foster building relationships and spending more time at that connection level so that you can have that phone a friend than we have on can you recite all the resources this agency provides. Right. So I truly don't know all of the substance use and prevention work, but I know Avery and I can call her and she will tell me all the things. And then I'll say, I can't remember if that falls under the behavioral health or you. And I just don't know who's leading this project or leading this meeting. And she'll say, here it is. Here's the 3 people you need to talk to. Right. And so we all have our phone a friends. And in the rural world, what we've found is giving ourselves the ability to step back and think about it through that human lens allows us to get more work done, to use what we have to get work done. So I would invite you to steal the slide, to think about what it looks like for your community, for your region, and can you just plug in those key names that you already have relationships with to get this information. Okay. And here it is back into the Help Me Grow framework, right? So these are all of our partners and all of the official funded and or non-funded MOU'd partners with the Help Me Grow framework. What I didn't talk a lot about on the previous slide was both the centralized access point and the data collection. So our centralized access point is through 211, which in our area is 211 run through United Way, right? So again, that one person, three things. And we have found great success in this. We don't have a ton of families accessing. We've increased throughout the years. But what we have found is just by being our centralized access point, that gives us ability to train some of those call specialists, and we are constantly giving them information on what new 0 to 5 resources there are. And so we see more 0 to 5 families calling, period. They might not be calling for Help Me Grow. They may not be calling for an ages and stages screener, but they are calling because what they're doing is finding more value in it because they're getting more answers. And so that's been a great cycle, whether we see the data around Help Me Grow or we just see the data around community support. That's been fantastic. It's also opened up opportunities for us to partner in different ways with different projects, and that's always really beneficial. The other piece in the data collection, so we mentioned that First Five runs the online data system. We collect the countywide data. We share it out in a way that supports folks planning. So for example, we look at like the countywide 3-year-old data for ages and stages. And if we see that last year fine motor was actually a really high need, then we share that so that anybody that's planning training events or focused on curriculum in the early childhood setting can know, hey, I probably need to double down on this fine motor work. Interestingly, anecdotally, we found that in 3rd grade, fine motor was a high need as well. And so that was a nice caveat or a nice connection point there. We also have started working with school districts. And so what this looks like is giving them unique access to the online screening tool so that they can embed it in their kindergarten roundups. They can use the ages and stages screener, which is a developmental tool, rather than a checklist that is a more deficit-based tool. It adds to our countywide data so we can do apples to apples. It transfers if a kiddo is transferring school districts. And it gives them a way with our online system, when we set it up separately, they can pull their data separately and not be looking at anybody else's data. This is a really in pilot phase. We've got 2 school districts that we're utilizing it with now. It kind of was a grassroots growing. Promise Neighborhoods was in our area, and they were looking at supporting school districts with developmental screeners. And so we were able to partner and see if we could pilot in this way. So more to come on that. But this is an area I'm personally really excited in because in our state, we've got a large movement to TK, which means that kindergarten roundups are no longer looking at incoming to kindergarten, but also incoming to TK, which means we've got 3- and 4-year-olds. And it just hurts my heart to see checklists from a deficit stance on 3-year-olds. That is just against everything I believe in child development. So this is a really powerful tool to give schools what they need and also be able to look at it from a developmental beneficial point of view. Okay. So how do you engage educators and health providers in the value of Help Me Grow? What is it that you do? How can you get more creative? How can you lean in your relationships? How can you expand what you're doing in a new way? I invite you to think about this question. I invite you to jot something down. I so wish we were here in person and we could have table discussions about it. And so maybe just take a picture of this slide and bring it back to your team, and maybe you can have a table discussion about it with your team. One thing that we have done that is very kind of, I'll say grassroots-ish, is to engage our dental providers. Mostly it's because we know them. Let me take a sip of coffee. This is actually, I'll show it to you. It's my Mama Corn mug. It is something that I use to bring myself energy because my daughters bought it for me. So maybe it'll bring you energy too. Okay, so we have looked at who is it we know in the healthcare fields that we can pull in and leverage their relationships. And so we happen to know some dentists, and there had been a lot of work in county around oral health previously. And so we used that. Also, it was the pandemic. We were not in person, and we needed some opportunities to engage families. So we invited dental providers that we knew to read a story. We have Potter the otter goes to the dentist, and Potter the otter drinks water, that leverage their message around, no sugary drinks and how to go to the dentist, and also leveraged their knowledge of child development. Just by doing that, we were able to have conversations and say, oh, well, what we want families to do is ask you questions. We want them to go to the dentist early. We want them to use Help Me Grow to find out where to go. We want to do these developmental screeners, right? So we had all these organic conversations. And we started a book club where folks could sign up to get free books without in-person meeting. And then we included these dental books in the book club, right? So we engaged families, free books. We increased our listserv so that we could connect ages and stages developmental screening information and get some folks screened that hadn't been screened. And we engaged our folks that we already had relationship with in another way, dental world, into our literacy work, the value of child development, and just knowing that this developmental screening took place. And side note, this particular provider, her name's Dr. White, she at the time had a 2-year-old. And so she went ahead and got him screened, that she hadn't had him screened previously, and enrolled him in the book club. And so then we're also engaging families who might have financial resources, but don't necessarily have child development resources. And so this was really positive. So this is one creative way that we looked at engaging the healthcare field. Another really creative way that has come to fruition in the last year was Angela had the idea to get these books into the hands of badges, right? Or police officers. One was we just wanted opportunities to develop positive relationships with police officers. 2, we knew that they were the folks still seeing families, right? There were family interactions that happened with emergency medical professional, police officers, sheriffs. So while schools may not have been seeing families, these folks were. And so we provided books for them to give to families when it was safe. And we called it Badges with Books, and it exploded. We heard, I think I would have to ask Angela, I think there's probably 23 people on the list right now of a badge, right? So we have DA's office, we have EMTs, we have firefighters and police officers. And sometimes they just give it to them when they are seeing them on a call. And other times we've seen them when there's been outreach events in the last 6 to 9 months where they're actually bringing the books at these outreach events, and we get calls for more. And so not only are they doing it on a call, but it's that's been their mechanism for engaging community, which of course we couldn't be more happy about. We have in the book a bookmark that has a QR code, so the families can use the QR code then to get engaged and connected with Help Me Grow. So another really creative way to on-road, on-ramp families. But the bigger bang for our buck is really this engagement with the law enforcement community that now is aware of child development needs and resources in the community. And so this we have seen great value in. Okay. The other thing that we worked really hard at doing is increasing our awareness of home visiting, because home visiting is such a powerful tool, and we really wanted to amplify and lift up our home visiting. Remember, I said they're all bilingual, bicultural, and this is incredibly important for us to provide value to with our professionals and also share with our families that we see them, we hear them, and we want to meet them exactly where they are. So I'm going to show you a short video, which is one creative way that we did to expand this knowledge, but also just a really powerful little story.
Home visiting presents parents with a comprehensive toolbox of knowledge and resources. It also provides permission not to be perfect, while supplying details about how our children develop and what we can do to support their growth and success over time. One passionate woman is going out of her way to serve as a parent champion. Melanie Wilson, School Readiness and Help Me Grow Director, supervises a home visiting program. Wilson spends her days acknowledging the vital role parents have in our society. Her mission is continually deliver a judgment-free service that inspires families to become stronger and motivate parents to interact with their children and community in new ways. Having people in your circle who get you and understand what you are going through helps parents deal with the stress and challenges that life inevitably brings. Thanks to Wilson's championing and a sincere, devoted home visitor staff, the program's success stories are piling up. As a result, The children in these families have more success in school and life. Home visiting is a collaborative effort brought to you by the Pregnancy to Preschool Partnership.
Awesome. I just love that video every time I watch it. Okay, I'm going to show you one more video, and this is focused on Norma, who is a
So you think
visitor.
you know Wix? Do you really?
Well, we're going to do a quick little
First up, we've got
ready,
Shake
skip
Video.
back. It's really like we're in person.
Home visiting presents parents with a comprehensive toolbox of knowledge and resources. It also provides permission not to be perfect while supplying details about how our children develop and what we can do to support their growth and success over time. Norman Chavez landed herself in this exact situation as a bilingual home visitor with school readiness and Help Me Grow. Chavez started as a parent in the program. A home visitor helped her identify her son's needs, connected her with Far Northern, and placed him on the path to achieving critical milestones. It's this experience that drives her dedicated efforts today. When working with parents, I always remember how supported I felt with my home visitor, Chavez shared. It's only logical that Chavez's favorite aspect of her job is helping families. This special bond that develops as a result of their work offers daily doses of joy. Although each family is different and requires individualized interaction and activities, each holds a special place in her heart. Home visiting is a collaborative effort brought to you by the Pregnancy to Preschool Partnership.
So thank you for watching those with me. It's so powerful every time. And so I know I invite you to think about your story and what the most utilized on-ramps to Help Me Grow are for families and how you engage bicultural and bilingual populations and families. Now, I shared some examples. For us, it's our workforce specifically, and then different types of partners like the donut shops I mentioned. And also we thought about some really creative on-ramps like badges for books or online dental stories that then you get the link to. So what do you do? What could you do different? What ideas have been in your brain and you just haven't given yourself permission to try yet? All right. And like I said before, maybe snap a photo of this and use this as a way to inspire your staff to have a conversation or throw it out on social media for how you might do it differently. There, you never know where the creative ideas come from. And we just really want to empower ourselves to think different and to use our rural relationships in different and new ways. I mentioned to you that we knew the dentists. I didn't mention to you that she's my best friend. She actually lives next door to me. Right. And for a long time, I didn't think about that. I thought, oh, I can't do that. It's too personal. And then finally, when I did ask, it opened up the world and we found all these new different partnerships. Okay. Stress Buster Cafe. This is something that we came to from after the big hump of our pandemic, in that we needed to get connected. And I mentioned we get really creative on kinds of partnerships we foster in relationships. And so this is how we did that. We hosted a Stress Buster Cafe. We knew we all needed support and de-stressing. And we also knew that at the top of the list for families was ways to get the mental health support we needed, de-stress at home. We don't have access to as mental health providers as we need. So we need smarter tools, right? Mini tools. And we were a part of an ACEs Aware grant in California that enabled us to host a Stress Buster Cafe. We are on the 3rd annual now. We've had 3. We use these as our connection cafes. So instead of doing quarterly cafes, we have different collaboratives that meet, but we host this as that Help Me Grow connection cafe. And we also use it to glean some very localized data. Remember, I mentioned that we use that state level data for the why, but we do look at some close data. We wanted to know, one, how we doing on understanding resilience and protective factors in county, and 2, how we doing on relationships with each other. So we actually measure the connectivity between the different types of professionals that we know are needed. Remember that slide that I showed with the job, employment and behavioral health and mental health. So we use that to measure the connectivity to see how connected are we. What we found is that both home visiting and early childhood professionals are very connected to many of these, but we don't always find the strength of it back. And one was really weak was employment. And so that's the one we focused on most. For the next year, we invited employment representatives to every collaborative we could think of. And then we saw the following year an increase. Now our N's fairly small. We have about 14 to 18 folks that fill this out, but it's really powerful for us to utilize to think and move forward. The N for the parent and resilient, or the resilience and protective factor information, is closer to 40. And so that's a better way for us to gauge like how we can advance our professional learning. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is our how that makes Help Me Grow work. This is our partnership between all of the 0 to 5 subsidized programs, including home visiting, early education, early care, Head Start, state preschool, that enables us to share families and refer families to one another. When somebody comes to us, being any one of those organizations, and wants to enroll, if we either don't have a spot, for example, if Head Start's full, or if they don't qualify, like they just don't meet whatever our funding stipulations are, we utilize this online data system referral platform to then refer them to what we believe is the best program that would fit their need. And if we don't know, we refer them to Help Me Grow. And Help Me Grow will then not let this family go until they enroll them in the right program. And we do this because what we have found is that sometimes you need to be on 3 different waiting lists at one time, and you don't understand that as a family. And we want there to be no gaps. We want to not lose any families. And so then really Help Me Grow is the link that doesn't let us lose a family, that is going to return to that family and at minimum get a screener done and connect them to basic resources while they're waiting for an education resource. This is also where we use our shared data. So we track data about how we are referring to families, and you can see Help Me Grow goes up, right? So we do all of the referrals to these families. And if those families the resources, and if those partners don't know where to go, they go to Help Me Grow. And then also Help Me Grow does so much outreach to all those other organizations on the bottom that we funnel them through to these organizations, right? Our goal is always to work ourselves out of a job, right? Our goal is always to get families connected to other programs as much as possible, and for us to just be that catch-all or supporting data system. But we know that's never going to happen. We know there's more need than will ever go on. And so that's really the value system of this partnership, is that we know there is more work. We will never actually lose our work. And so we don't have to be protective over our families. We can share our families and share the work, and a rising, tide raises all ships. This didn't happen overnight. This took years of partnership development to really be able to truly share. And also, it is how we stay accountable with our data. We share every other month. We come together and look at our referral data. And if we've got more folks on that wait list than we have referred, we know we have to go back and figure it out. Leads to training staff. It leads to engaging new staff. It leads to reinventing systems. But it's our shared data system. It's our shared accountability. And it really keeps us connected in a very actionable and meaningful way. You can use referral systems in a lot of ways. We did a homegrown data one. We didn't have the funds to adopt a developed system. We still don't really have those funds. We're working on it. And so we used what we could to do what we have. I would love a data system that's more complete than we have. But at minimum, we can refer families, and that's really critical. And so I think that's one of the big things is how, what do you have? What can you use? I know some folks have used like a Google Forms if you can protect it enough, and so I think, how can you engage? What can you do? What does the first step look like? Okay, again, I invite you to snap a photo of this and think about it. This can be something you think about with other partners. It can be something you think about with your boards. It's a really key, and it's one of our indicators we know on a true shared system is how we hold each other accountable. Okay. So I leave you with this quote because as home visiting is part of our Help Me Grow network, it seems so true to me that it is also the parachute. Sometimes when we jump into parenting, we don't really know what it is, and we just wish somebody would hand us a parachute to help us on the way down, right? Help us figure and navigate this out. And so this quote really resonates, that home visiting has taught me not to be my mom and dad. And when I get angry, that I can take a break, because I could easily behave like my dad did, but I really think I'm better after this class. Right. And they're referring to home visiting as this class. I mean, if that is not our why, if that doesn't directly impact those numbers that we started with to decrease child abuse, to increase our connectivity, to increase reading, I don't know what does. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Here are the reflection questions that we did throughout. I would invite you to talk about them with anybody that you do this Help Me Grow work with. And often these expand beyond Help Me Grow. They, really relate to systems work in general. And my email address is HMendenHall@First5Tehama. I would welcome a conversation. You can also just find me by Googling First 5 Tehama website. And there's a connect button there. And I'd love to learn and hear from you. And hopefully next time I'll maybe see you in person.